I'm a human too. I have a family. I have two kids who are devastated by these comments.
And albeit indirectly, it involves...
The 2024 and 2025 WNBA seasons will be remembered not just for the records broken on the hardwood, but as the era of the great institutional friction. What we are witnessing right now in 2026 is the aftermath of a singular inflection point in the history of women's professional sports. This isn't just about a generational talent named Caitlin Clark. It's about the systemic inability of a 30-year-old league infrastructure to absorb the sheer kinetic energy of her ascendancy. For decades, the WNBA operated under a scarcity mindset, a collective-first marketing philosophy where no single star was allowed to eclipse the W logo. Then came the Clark effect, a phenomenon with so much economic gravity that it didn't just move the needle, it bent the entire compass. The central tension we're exploring today is the reported rage and resentment vibrating through the WNBA's executive offices, specifically centering on Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. This isn't a simple story of personal jealousy. It is a symptom of profound institutional disruption. When an individual athlete becomes more valuable than the organization that employs her, the hierarchy doesn't just tremble, it enters a state of defensive panic. To understand the current climate, we have to deconstruct the media narrative that has framed the relationship between Caitlin Clark and the league office as a literal Cold War. This narrative has been spearheaded by some of the most influential voices in sports media, transforming administrative decisions into psychological profiles of the executive suite. Stephen A. Smith has been the primary architect of what we call the rot at the core doctrine. He hasn't just been analyzing basketball. He's been exposing a corporate jealousy that he claims is the most blatant in the history of professional sports. Smith's argument is that the reaction to Clark's unicorn status, the sold-out arenas, the record-shattering viewership, the massive influx of sponsorship, wasn't met with a victory lap from the league office. Instead, it was met with a tailspin. The narrative suggests that Commissioner Engelbert and the old guard are essentially in a state of emotional compromise because they didn't create the Caitlin Clark phenomenon, and more importantly, they cannot control it. Smith's commentary implies a massive competence gap. If an outside entity achieves in 6 months what the administration failed to achieve in nearly 3 decades, the psychological response isn't celebration, it's defensiveness. Smith famously noted that instead of riding the wave, the league spent much of 2024 and 2025 trying to build a dam. That metaphor is the key to everything. It paints the league office as an obstructionist force, actively working against its own financial interests to preserve its ego and its established sense of authority. This sentiment was echoed and amplified by Charles Barkley, who stripped away the corporate jargon and labeled the league's treatment of Clark as petty. Barkley's critique was an indictment of a leadership culture that allowed a vibe of hostility to fester. He argued that the league effectively sabotaged the excitement surrounding Clark by failing to protect and market her with the same vigor they used for established veterans. This creates a fascinating sociological conflict. The WNBA has historically marketed itself as a cause, a movement for equality. Clark, however, represents pure capitalistic superstardom. She disrupts the all-for-one hierarchy. The friction arises because the old guard views the league as a seniority-based meritocracy, where you have to pay your dues, whereas the external market operates on a relevancy model where Clark is immediately the supreme asset. Barkley's point was that the league was fighting over crumbs while Clark was baking a whole new cake. The established power structures from the Players Association to the Commissioner's Office spent years negotiating for incremental 5% gains. Clark's arrival promised a 500% explosion, but it required a seating of the spotlight that the incumbents were psychologically unprepared for. Adding a layer of complexity to this rage is the racial and cultural vector. Stephen A. Smith and other pundits have pointed out that the resentment toward Clark is often compounded by the perception that she is receiving the attention and investment that Black pioneers of the league were denied for years. The critique of Commissioner Engelbert, however, is that she failed to navigate this sensitivity with any degree of skill. By failing to adequately credit the Black women who built the foundation while simultaneously failing to fully embrace the white superstar expanding the house, Engelbert managed to alienate everyone. The rage attributed to her is the frustration of an executive who is losing the support of her predominantly Black player base while simultaneously fumbling the marketing of her biggest financial asset. This creates a toxic feedback loop. If leadership signals that Clark is a problem to be managed rather than a star to be celebrated, it emboldens a culture of on-court hostility. This leads to the on-court violence narratives and the social media toxicity that further damages the league's reputation, causing even more stress in the executive suite. The conflict is perhaps most visible in the commercial proxy war. The aesthetics of Clark's private endorsements stand in jarring contrast to the league's official marketing. Reports indicate that specific commercials featuring Clark triggered actual negative reactions within the league office. Think about the high-production spots from State Farm, Gatorade, and Nike. In these campaigns, Clark is framed as a force of nature and a cultural icon. The visual language of these ads separates her from the pack. She isn't shown as one of 144 players, she is shown as the player. When a State Farm spot voiced by Lisa Leslie asks what it takes to rewrite history, it positions Clark as a revolutionary figure, not just a rookie participant. This branding strategy declares that Clark is bigger than the sport itself. For a league that has spent 30 years trying to make the W the primary brand, seeing a single player elevated to mythical status by external corporations is a direct challenge to their narrative control. The rage here stems from a total loss of corporate leverage. In a traditional model, the league controls the player's image, but Clark's off-court economy, estimated at upwards of $16 million, dwarfs her league salary of $76,000. This financial disparity means the commissioner has no economic hold over her. When Engelbert sees a Gatorade ad that is slicker, more exciting, and more culturally relevant than the WNBA's own marketing, it serves as a humiliating reminder of the league's historical inadequacy. The commercial sector has voted, and they have elected Clark as the face of the sport, effectively bypassing the commissioner's authority to designate stars. The league's reaction to these commercial victories has been described as a deafening silence. When an NBA star like Anthony Edwards launches a signature shoe, the NBA's official channels amplify that win. In contrast, the WNBA has been accused of a deliberate strategy of omission regarding Clark's milestones. They rarely repost her external partnerships, reinforcing the perception that they view her individual brand as a competitor. This isn't just a passive choice, it's business malpractice. By refusing to leverage the massive marketing spend of partners like State Farm, who are also league partners, the WNBA is leaving free publicity on the table. This suggests that the desire to deny Clark special treatment is actually stronger than the business imperative to grow the audience. It's a classic case of cutting off one's nose to spite one's face, driven by the very jealousy Smith and Barkley identified. The abstract theories of resentment crystallized into a concrete scandal with the Grateful controversy involving NaLyssa Collier. In a scathing exit interview, Collier labeled the WNBA's governance as the worst leadership in the world. The core of the allegation was a private conversation where Commissioner Engelbert reportedly told Collier that Caitlin Clark should be grateful. She makes $16 million off the court, because without the WNBA platform, she wouldn't make anything. Collier went further, alleging that Engelbert said the players should be on their hands and knees thanking her for the media rights deal she secured. If these allegations are true, they reveal a profound disconnect from economic reality. The statement implies the WNBA platform created Clark's value, when the data shows the inverse. Clark brought the value to the platform. Her games shattered attendance records, TV ratings, and merchandise sales. Brands like Nike and Gatorade signed her based on her collegiate dominance, not her WNBA affiliation. The phrase "on their hands and knees" suggests a feudal, paternalistic relationship where the Lord bestows favors upon the serfs. It reveals a scarcity mindset where the commissioner resents a player for generating wealth that the league cannot touch or claim credit for. When confronted, Engelbert's response was a non-denial denial, focusing on inaccuracies rather than a categorical rebuttal of the sentiment. This ambiguity only fueled the fire, confirming to pundits that the leadership feels underappreciated and resentful of the shifting power dynamics. We can even see this friction in the digital forensics of the league's social media. One of the most persistent controversies is the alleged suppression of Clark's achievements. While shadow banning is usually a conspiracy theory, the undercounted assists incident provided a compelling trail of evidence. The WNBA posted a graphic commemorating Clark's record-breaking rookie season but claimed she had 321 assists when she actually had 337. For a professional league to miscount the primary statistic of its most popular player in a celebratory post is statistically improbable as a mere accident. It was mocked as petty and indicative of a subconscious desire to dampen the scale of her dominance. Fans also noted a consistent delay in announcing Clark's Rookie of the Month awards compared to other announcements. Even when she was averaging 20 points and 12 assists, the recognition felt low fanfare. This pattern of slow-rolling recognition is consistent with the old guard mentality of making rookies earn it, even when their numbers are already MVP caliber. There is a clear zero-sum game being played in the league's digital strategy. There appears to be a concerted effort to push Aja Wilson as the face of the league, to counterbalance the Clark phenomenon. When Wilson won Time Magazine's 2025 Athlete of the Year and used the platform to claim that the history of the WNBA was erased for a minute, it was seen as a direct shot at the Clark media frenzy. The WNBA's official accounts aggressively amplify Wilson's achievements while often burying Clark's highlights in carousels or posting them hours late. Insider reports suggest this is a top-down directive to ensure the narrative remains focused on the established hierarchy. This fairness doctrine is disastrous for engagement because algorithms favor velocity. By artificially throttling Clark content to ensure equal time, the WNBA is fighting the very technology that could triple its reach. This is an indicator of the rot Stephen A. Smith describes, a leadership more concerned with internal politics than maximizing growth. The digital management also includes a sanitation of on-court conflict. When Clark was subjected to hard fouls that the public perceived as hazing, the league's social channels were accused of deleting comments that highlighted the physicality. By sanitizing these moments, the league attempts to maintain a sisterhood image, but it effectively gaslights fans who are seeing targeted hostility with their own eyes. This censorship extends to the refusal to apologize for controversial takes from media agents. The strategy is to ignore it and it will go away. But in the age of social media, that only fuels the us versus them mentality among Clark's massive fan base. Now, we must address the kill shot, the existential threat posed by the Unrivaled League. Founded by Breanna Stewart and NaLyssa Collier, this 3-on-3 league has evolved from a supplementary off-season project into a direct competitor for Clark's services. Reports of a Lionel Messi-like offer to Clark changed everything. This package reportedly includes a base salary exceeding $1 million for less than 3 months of work, compared to her $76,000 WNBA salary, along with significant equity and revenue sharing. This offer fundamentally breaks the WNBA's economic model. The WNBA relies on a salary cap and a collective bargaining agreement that artificially depresses the wages of superstars to subsidize the rest of the roster. Unrivaled operates on a free market model, paying players based on their revenue-generating power. The Messi comparison is perfect because, like Messi's MLS deal, it makes Clark a partner in the business, not just an employee. For Commissioner Engelbert, Unrivaled is a nightmare scenario. It proves that the market values Clark at 10 to 15 times what the WNBA pays her. If Clark accepts the Unrivaled offer, she proves she doesn't need the WNBA to play professional basketball in America. She could theoretically use that salary and equity to force the WNBA into a massive CBA renegotiation or even a lockout. The rage described by insiders is the fear of obsolescence. The WNBA assumed they owned Caitlin Clark because they thought she had nowhere else to go. Unrivaled provides an alternative ecosystem where she is treated like the partner she is. The league's hostility toward her may be a defensive reaction to the realization that she holds the deed to the garage. The tension is further heightened by scheduling conflicts. If Unrivaled runs from January to March and the WNBA moves training camps earlier to expand the season, a collision is inevitable. If players have to choose between the Unrivaled playoffs, where the real money is, and the start of the WNBA season, the choice they make will signal where the true center of power lies. The WNBA owners feel semi-threatened by this. If Clark skips the start of the WNBA season to recover from Unrivaled, the league loses its biggest draw during the opening weeks. This is a game of chicken that Engelbert is terrified of losing. The most damaging aspect of this tenure has been the failure to navigate the racial and cultural tensions. The rage is also the product of being squeezed between a new, largely white fan base brought in by Clark and a predominantly black player base that feels disrespected. The flashpoint was the CNBC Power Lunch interview. When asked about the darker tone of fan bases and the racism directed at players like Angel Reese, Engelbert failed to denounce the toxicity. Instead, she compared the Clark-Reese dynamic to the Bird Magic rivalry of the 80s and said, "You need rivalry. That's what makes people watch." This was a catastrophic answer. By framing racist abuse as a marketing tool, she alienated the Players Association. Union leadership and stars like Breanna Stewart issued blistering statements expressing disappointment that the commissioner didn't simply say, "It's not okay." This moment exposed Engelbert as a corporate technocrat incapable of understanding the social weight of her league. She viewed toxicity through a profit and loss lens, failing to protect her employees. This failure deepened the rift, adding another layer of dysfunction. Her subsequent apology was viewed as too little, too late. To the black players, she appeared to care more about rivalry revenue than their dignity. To Clark's camp, she failed to de-escalate the toxicity, allowing Clark to become a lightning rod for a culture war rather than a basketball player. The reports of Kathy Engelbert in a rage are the personification of a systemic collapse. The WNBA was constructed for 27 years as a subsidized, seniority-based institution. Caitlin Clark represents a shock doctrine, hyper-individualized and commercially autonomous. The league leadership reacted with resistance instead of agility. They tried to dampen the hype to protect the collective brand. They held on to a belief that players serve the league, which is incompatible with the modern era of player empowerment. They are facing the loss of their monopoly power. As Stephen A. Smith noted, the league is watching a single player become bigger than the entire organization, and instead of riding the wave, they are trying to build a dam. The 2024 and 2025 timeline confirms that the dam has failed. The commercial market, the media, and the fans have sided with the star. The commissioner's reported anger is the final thrashing of an old order that is being forcibly modernized by a rookie who simply refused to wait her turn.